Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our last QPS talk time of the season. Welcome. If you've been with us through the year, I'm sure you're looking forward to this session today on psychologically safe leadership. And this is just reminding people over the summer, if you're missing us terribly, you can follow us on Twitter, but even better, you can go to our website and have a look at our YouTube channel, and you can catch up on the QPS talk times that you've not had a chance to see over the summer, and they're all up there, and actually from the last few seasons as well. We will be tweeting a little bit over the summer, so do continue to follow us. And if you have some interesting ideas or you see things that you think we'd like to know about, please do include us in your tweets. And again, just a couple of reminders here. The Q community, there's some information there on joining Q, and you can contact Mary Lawless or Roisin Eggington. And we would encourage everybody who listens in regularly to QPS Talk Time to check out Q and to join. And there's lots and lots of different things from connecting with others to Q events to research bursaries and things like that. So I think Q is a wonderful resource, and it's across the UK, Northern Ireland and Ireland. So great to get that connection with people. We have our QPS network map of Ireland as well. So that link there will bring you to that, where you can register and get yourself on the map. And if you're already on the map, then I would suggest to you, your task might be to try and find others who should be on the map but aren't, and maybe to encourage them to get themselves on the map. Our podcast series, again, if you're lying on the beach over the summer and you're looking for something to do, please do check out our podcast. So Walk and Talk Improvement, done in partnership with our colleagues in Northern Ireland and HSCQI. It's 6 podcast episodes covering the themes of the patient safety strategy, and some really good conversations there. And I certainly would encourage you to check that out, and also to tell other people about it. And then finally, our QPS prospectus there with all of the educational offerings, and the QR code can take you to that. So that might be something as you are thinking what you might like to do for the rest of the year over the summer. These might be things you could look at doing and learn a bit more about them. Okay, so in order to get going with today's session, I'm going to get you using the chat box. So, and then we've got some statements, and I think when it comes to maybe responding to these statements, this is really, I suppose, coming back to our theme of today, psychologically safe leadership. We'd like you to maybe include the number as you're answering these questions. And psychological safety is something everybody will be familiar if you've been listening to our podcast over the year, our webinars over the year. Psychological safety has come up again and again in and of itself, but also in related to other themes such as just culture or our compassionate leadership. Psychological safety is all the time coming up when we talk about those topics. So finish these statements. So statement 1, thinking back over your career, and we don't want anybody to name any names, even though I'm sure these will be very positive. What were the characteristics of the leader that you felt safest with, and why? So the characteristics of the leader you felt safest with and why. That's number 1. Statement 2, thinking back over your career. What were the characteristics? Oh, sorry, that's the same question. And then the third one, for me, psychological safety at work means. So, so yeah, just if you could just label those 1 or 2. So just back to the characteristics of the leader you felt safe and why they made you feel safe. And then what does psychological safety mean for you at work, number 2. Now, it's a pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Anna Burhouse. Anna is Director of Quality Development at Northumbria Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. That sounds like an interesting job, Anna. We'll have to hear a bit about that. And she's also worked previously as a child and adolescent psychotherapist. And Maureen and I have had the good fortune to meet Anna and to work with her, where she's facilitated a group that we're involved in with the Q community, and we've really grown to know and value and enjoy Anna, but we've also developed, I think, a great respect for the way she creates psychological safety and demonstrates psychologically safe leadership. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Anna today, and she's going to take us through some discussion about psychological safety, but we're also going to do a little exercise or two, and she's going to give us some practical tools. So Anna, over to you.
Oh, thank you, John, and thank you, Maureen, and thank you, everybody. I'm really delighted to be with you all today. So I'm going to share a few kind of slides with you. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today, and I really want it to be interactive if possible. So do feel free to put things in the chat as we go along, and John and Yanita are going to help me very much kind of keep on top of the chat as we go. So what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to have a really light touch reminder about what psychological safety is and isn't. And I'm going to signpost you to some more resources. But the things that I really want to get into in more detail today are a bit of a discussion about the leadership skills that promote psychological safety. And because I'm quite a practical person, I really want you to be able to kind of go away from today and have things that you can practice or tools that you can take away and do with your team. So the three that we're going to think in more detail about are the ones that Amy Emerson recommends, which is how to set the stage, how to invite inclusive participation and engagement, and how you can respond empathically and productively to your team when you're learning as you go. So those are the three things. So hopefully by now you've had a bit of a moment to think about the questions that John just asked you. So John, can you tell me what you're seeing in the chat and what's kind of coming through in terms of the characteristics really of leaders that were either safe or unsafe?
I'm just, we haven't got much in the chat yet, Anna, so maybe we might give people a couple of moments just to
come back
to
to
come back.
later.
We'll come back in a few moments and have a look.
Okay.
I think just to be clear, just I suppose the characteristics question was what the characteristics that made you feel safe, and then in the question too, I think it was the characteristics that made you feel least safe. I'm not sure if I made that clear. And then finally, what does psychological safety at work mean?
Great, thank you, John. Just think about that really. What we're trying to kind of unearth with those questions are really, when did you feel you were under the leadership of somebody that just really made you feel you could be at your best, you could take a few risks, you could contribute from your whole self without fear that you were going to be judged or blamed in any way? So we'll come back to that. But let's get going with a little recap on psychological safety and what it means. So it's really not a new concept. Warren Bennis and Eggersheim were writing about it in 1965, and they talked about it as a critical factor that helped people to learn new behaviours and overcome kind of defensive routines. And it was seen and has continued to be seen as especially important for enabling learning and change when you're working in complex contexts which necessitate essential human interaction. So that's why it's so kind of relevant for healthcare, because a lot of the time we're having to work in situations where the knowledge about what to do doesn't just sit with one person. It has to sit in a kind of distributed team. So it's vitally important in healthcare because the research tells us that when we have psychological safety and it's feeling quite high in a team, that nurses or other professionals will speak out about errors more often. People are more committed to the organisation and to patient safety. There's a reduction in unsafe kind of workarounds, and critically important particularly when you're a leader that's interested in learning how to lead for improvement, is that it really helps you to learn well as a team, not just learning from technical experts, but learning about the people that are helping to put evidence into practice. When you've got psychological safety, you're more likely to be working in a team that feels more engaged, where performance matters to more people, and where both the team and the organisation are able to kind of learn from failure. It's particularly relevant for healthcare because we're often working in what are sometimes called VUCA environments, which are volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, where anybody's voice might be mission critical. And there, really, the role of the leader is to try and be inclusive and set the tone for psychological safety, so that that one person whose voice might be critical is able to be heard. There's been some really kind of interesting research coming out of Google in 2016, where their people analytics unit did a deep dive into what was helping their team performance. And they found that psychological safety came out as the absolutely essential element. It was not only the number one characteristic of their high-performing teams, but they found that the other four factors here of dependability, structure and clarity, meaning and impact only really came into play once psychological safety was embedded. So it was really seen as the thing that held the high-performing teams together and made it work really effectively. And when they dug even deeper into what elements of psychological safety were the key ones, what they found was that the most important element was the team could take risks without feeling insecure or embarrassed. And when you stop to think about this, it's not really surprising, is it? Because we work in healthcare in a highly kind of, as in Google, in a highly technical environment where knowledge is held in high regard, and we don't want to embarrass ourselves in front of our colleagues and our peers. So, John, has anything else come through yet that might be relevant to bring in here in terms of the characteristics of those leaders?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I think we had a little problem with our chat earlier, so we're getting loads of responses now. So, yeah, lots and lots of characteristics coming in here. So, open, honest, supportive, treated as an equal, no hierarchy, open to conversation, being a great listener, empathy, non-judgmental, and then we're having some opposites, I think, in our least psychologically safe. So micromanaging, not trusting, being critical.
Great. Oh, great.
So yeah, I think lots of the same ideas coming through: honesty, compassionate, warm, approachable. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. So it sounds like people have got a really good sense of what it is and that they notice it when it's not there. And I think sometimes people think that it's quite hard to define psychological safety. But when you look at this definition from Amy Emerson, I think it's beautifully clear. She defines it as the belief that the work environment is safe for interpersonal risk taking and that people feel able to speak up with relevant ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes without fear of being punished or humiliated. It's a lovely, clear definition. If you want to see more, do check out both of Amy Emerson's talks on TED because they're fantastic. I think it's really interesting to think about what it is and what it isn't. It's not actually about being nice, although that does help. And, being open and compassionate is absolutely key to it. It doesn't mean that you're avoiding kind of conflict, because actually what you're trying to get to is a place where you can have really good differences of opinions. It's not a guarantee that your ideas are going to be applauded or acted on. It's really a place where you can share your ideas without fear of humiliation. So it links really strongly with that creation of a just culture, as John mentioned earlier. It's about trying not to compromise high quality care or reduce operational standards or expectations. So what you see and what you're trying to do really as a leader is you're trying to create an environment that's high on psychological safety, but also high on accountability and motivation. And you're trying to help and encourage the team that you're leading to get into what Amy Emerson calls the learning zone, where there's a focus on team collaboration, learning and improvement. Now, most teams in healthcare will spend time in all of these zones, but if you're trying to lead in a psychologically safe way, you're always trying to encourage people to get back to that learning zone and to be reflective and curious about what it's taken to mean that maybe you spent a bit of time, say, in the anxiety zone. So you're trying to be really thoughtful about how you promote that culture within your team. And your own personal leadership style is absolutely key to building psychological safety. And Amy Emerson's come up with 3 really helpful core attributes that she thinks leaders have to have really if they want to lead in a psychologically safe way. And these are humility, and that's about how you might frame the work so that you create a really clear shared purpose of the understanding of the work that you're trying to do, and being really clear about why everybody's voice matters. Curiosity, the way that you ask questions, invite engagement, kind of show that you don't know it all yourself. And also empathy, how you respond, particularly in the face of failure, and how you have a sense about focusing forward on learning for improvement. So let's get into these three a little bit more. So the first skill is humility, framing the work. So there's a really kind of wonderful opportunity as a leader to learn how to frame work right at the very beginning that help you to promote psychological safety. So what you're trying to do really is build a shared understanding of how complex and uncertain and novel the nature of the work is that you're about to try and embark upon. You want to try and acknowledge the potential for failures, and you also want to try and emphasize why it's really important for everybody to speak up. You want to, so in the kind of speech bubble here, there's a kind of an attempt at a bit of framing. You might want to say something about this is the type of complexity we're facing, and you might want to go into a bit of detail with that. And then you might want to invite people to say, I'd really like to hear everybody's views and ideas. What do you think our shared purpose is here? What do you think we might face on this journey as we try and learn and experiment? What do you think we might learn from this opportunity? So you're really trying to encourage experimentation. So you want to think about creating a shared purpose. You want to create a space in the team to be able to use kind of an open dialogue about what your shared expectations are. Really, if you can, you want to try and encourage co-design at the beginning of this process so that people feel that they're included from the start. And on a personal level, you really want to role model humility. And if you want to know more about that as a leader, then Edgar Schein's written a brilliant book called The Humble Leader that really helps you to think about how you frame your leadership in this space in order to make you yourself feel really kind of approachable. So I am going to stop sharing here in a sec because we're going to do a little bit of an exercise because Maureen and John have very helpfully agreed to kind of play along with this a little bit and have a go at doing some live framing for us. So they're going to have a go at framing how they're going to introduce the idea that a team is going to adopt the practice of having a safety huddle. So in the chat, it would be really great if you could offer John and Maureen some psychologically safe and compassionate feedback about how does their framing land with you? Does it make you feel psychologically safe? Would it make you want to engage with them? What could they say or do differently to frame it in a more psychologically safe way? And any other kind of thoughts or reflections you have about framing in general. So this time will fly by, and the reason we're doing this exercise is because it really replicates the reality that we're put in as leaders all the time in healthcare, where we're under pressure, we're asked to frame something, and I think invariably we're never going to get it perfectly right, and that's okay. Because another part of psychological leadership is not only how you frame things in the moment, but how you respond if you don't get it quite right or it doesn't quite kind of land with your audience in the way that you want it to. I'm going to hand over to Maureen. She's going to have a go at framing the ask for us. Maureen.
Listen up, everyone. I have an important announcement. There's been a lot of mistakes lately. I had a memo from the CEO. We're introducing something new, daily safety huddles, on all wards, starting from Monday next, 3rd of July. This is a must-do. You're all required to attend every day at 8 o'clock, no exceptions. I'll send the memo around today. It has the steps. We must do this as described. There's no room for slip-ups. I'll be checking up to ensure this is happening. It's an imperative. We just can't fail. My reputation depends on this. Now, I have an important meeting to attend to. So let's just get on with this safety initiative.
Brilliant. I love the reflection from Jennifer Martin that you've clearly had a personality change there, Maureen. Thank you for playing along with that. And it's great to see the feedback coming in. So we've got Nicola saying it lands in a fearful way. You don't understand how it might work. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Scary. Absolutely, Fiona. I agree with you. So keep those kind of coming in, threatening, giving orders, no collaboration, no room for questions or clarification, and uncompromising. Absolutely. We're not interested in what you have to say at all here. Yeah, autocratical. Great. Fantastic. So what would how would you help Maureen reframe that? Maybe get some of those kind of thoughts going in as well. What suggestions would you offer to Maureen to make it a bit different? And whilst you do that in the chat, I'm going to invite John to come in now and have a go at live framing too. And this is not easy, folks. This is taking quite a lot from John and Maureen to do this live in front of you all. So John, over to you.
So yeah, hi everyone. Look, I'd really appreciate your help on this. I got a memo from the CEO requesting that we would introduce safety huddles on the wards from next week. Now I've some experience in safety huddles, but I don't have a lot, and I'd really like to hear what everybody else's experience has been. Maybe you've been in a course, you've read up something about it. So I'd be keen just to get all the ideas. I do think we've been asked to do it, so we should try and start doing it from next week, but I'd be really keen to get people together, maybe to agree on a time that we might do it and a place that we might do it, and start to think about how we can get going. I've read a little bit about it, and I've seen that a script would be a helpful thing. So I think, if we came up with some questions, now I have a few ideas of my own, but I'd be really keen to hear what other people's ideas for questions to go into the script might be. And certainly, I think one of the things we'd like to do is make the huddle safe for everybody to attend and to speak up. And I just don't know how to do that. Again, I've some ideas. I think we need to model our own vulnerability and show people that we don't have all the answers. But I'd be keen to see what others would do. And I think it's important at the huddle that it's not just one person speaking. I think we really want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak. And look, it's something none of us have really done it before. There will be some mistakes. It won't be perfect to start, but as long as we're speaking with each other, we'll all learn, and I think we'll be able to do this to make care safer for the patients.
Lovely. Thank you, John. You're getting some lovely feedback in the chat here, showing humility, being collaborative, setting up that it doesn't have to be perfect. Whereas I think, Maureen, in your character that you were playing a moment ago, it all had to be spot on, didn't it? So, John and Maureen, how do you reflect having to do that kind of like on the fly and frame in that way? And what's your reflections on the characters you had to play there?
I think Jennifer Martin could put the same comment in for me. But my personality changed there.
It's great. It's great to see the chat, isn't it? Because I think people are really seeing the difference between the two styles, which is what we hope to do. Yeah. Great. Lovely.
Just didn't feel natural or right being very autocratic, Anna, but I've experienced it, so I was able to role play it because I've been in that situation where memos all and it's coming from on high and you must do.
Yeah.
But it just feels hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're naturally empathic and you're naturally a psychological safe leader, then it feels really clunky to do it the other way around. But I think even when we're quite good at trying to create psychological safety, it's really interestingly how you can forget to frame, even if you're naturally quite good at it. So it's quite a discipline when you're setting off and starting a new piece of work to think, okay, how am I as a leader going to have that first conversation? How am I going to set the tone for the whole of this work? So I guess that's
Anna, you're right. It's it's really been paying a little attention to first impressions.
Yeah.
And like really setting the tone. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. And I'm going to go back into the other two skills, and we'll get back together again at the end for a bit of a chat. But I'm going to share my screen again now, if that's okay with everybody. So the next kind of skill is that you really want as a leader to be very curious. You want to invite inclusive participation and engagement. So if you framed it well and you've said, I really want to hear everybody's voice, then one of the things you have to do when you're actually doing it is make sure that you really do act that in your behaviours. So, for instance, you've got to notice who's spoken in the meeting. And we know that we'll have a mix of people that are very kind of extrovert and will come up with ideas straight away, but there might be some quieter kind of introverts in the group. So if somebody hasn't spoken for a while, you might want to draw them in. So you might want to say something like, Aoife, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? And you really want to make sure that your words match your behaviours, really, in terms of that inclusivity. And you really want to get the team to try and kind of be open with ideas that they think you should experiment. So there's some really good kind of techniques from places like Liberating structures that can really help you to think about how you invite your team to come up with improvement ideas really quickly and rapidly in quite fun ways that are very participative. So as a leader, I think you've got to really think on about what skills might you need to make sure that you keep coming back to that participation again and again. The other thing I'd say that you want to work on as a leader is you want to be able to get really good at spotting when groupthink or a pack mentality is coming through. So it's very easy in healthcare sometimes to go around the room and to see everybody's kind of nodding, particularly actually in teams that get on well together, because people don't want to stand out or be different. And if you need any proof of that, then I'd encourage you to watch this YouTube link that I've put on here about the Asch conformity experiment, where they get incredibly intelligent people to kind of agree that a line is not a certain length. So they override facts in order to conform, because that kind of groupthink impact is really strong. So as a leader, another thing you might want to do is to say, what are you seeing that I'm not? Or you might want to be even more specific and say, what would somebody that fundamentally disagrees with our position say? Because then you're really trying to open it up and you're trying to shift the group into a different position where they can look at it from kind of multiple positions. And I've put up here, and we're going to give you these slides, some really kind of simple questions that you can use in your kind of leader as coach kind of position. So they're open. You really want to get good at being able to ask open questions, asking people what they need from you in order to move things on, what we can do differently, how can we share the learning. You might want to dig a bit deeper and get really good at having a few kind of stock questions up your sleeve that will help you to get into the details and kind of unearth some of those team ideas. One of my favorite ones as a leader as well is there anything that you think I should stop doing, or anything you'd like me to do a little bit less of or more of that would help in this situation? Because then again, you're role modeling that you're open to change and you're open to learning yourself. So the third skill that Amy Emerson talks about is the ability to respond productively using empathy. And she really emphasizes the fact that as a leader, you've got to get really good at expressing your appreciation of people putting themselves forward and of sharing their ideas. So thanking people for coming up with ideas, and even if they're difficult to hear. So in some of her talks, she describes a situation where a CEO was woken up in the middle of the night, and the first thing he said to the person that woke him up was, "Thank you so much for waking me up. I know that won't have been an easy thing to do. I know that the news that you're having to give me now might be difficult." So that leader is framing and embracing people that are having to give him or her messages that are a bit uncomfortable. So don't just sometimes respond with a knee-jerk reaction to the facts that you're being presented. Take time to know that the person having to talk to you sometimes as a leader or break bad news to you as a leader is going to have gone through quite a difficult process to get to you. So make sure that you use your empathy, because in doing that, if somebody knows that you will be reliable when they break bad news to you, then they'll know that your leadership is psychologically safe, and they're more likely to come with you, and they're more likely to come with you when they've made a mistake or they've got something that important that they need to raise. So you're kind of investing in the future with that one a little bit, really. And it's the same with helping people to learn from failure. As a leader, you're really kind of always going to need to kind of remind people that we're here to learn from what's gone wrong. So there's a lovely kind of Samuel Beckett quote, which is, "Try again, fail better." And I think as a leader, if that's your mantra with your team, that you're really trying to, as a team, help people to kind of learn better and get better at failing and hopefully in safe, thoughtful, appropriate ways in healthcare, then you're really going to help people to understand that they will take a few proportional risks, because we don't move forward in healthcare unless we do. The one other thing I want to mention under this skill set is how to set team boundaries. And in my experience, this is the element that people struggle with the most. So being a psychologically safe leader won't stop you having HR issues, won't stop you having difficult issues that you have to deal with. But sometimes if you can be explicit about how you contract around team boundaries, it can at least help you to be clearer about the kind of psychologically safe culture that you're trying to create within the team. So there's a really simple exercise that I want to share with you, where maybe if you're starting out on a brand new piece of improvement work or thinking at a team away day, for instance, you could invite people to come up with a bit of a contract about how do we make our team more psychologically safe? How could we work together in a way that will really get the most out of each other's kind of company? So you draw a circle, you put the word in the center of it on a piece of paper, and you put the words out on the other sides, and you invite people just to say, okay, what behaviours are in this team that would help us all to feel more psychologically safe? What behaviours are out? And then, you know, if you've agreed that and contracted that as a team, you can use this as a tool to come back to, and you can reflect on it like 3 months later. How are we doing? Are we on track with this? Are we holding ourselves to account for our behaviours in the team? And this is something I don't think we do very often in healthcare, but you might see happen a bit more in other industries. And so I think it's a very simple but powerful kind of tool that we can use to take forward. Another quick tool to take away is Amy Evanson's 7 questions. So she's developed these great questions that you can self-assess either yourself about your position, about how you're feeling in your team, or we did this recently with the gastro team in Northumbria, where the whole of the gastro team answered these 7 questions anonymously. We collated their feedback, we gave it back to them as a team, and it was really interesting for them to then debate, what is this profile telling us about our team? How safe are we feeling? Are we able to bring up problems? Are mistakes held against us? Is it safe to take, you know, an appropriate proportional risk? Can we ask other team members to help? And you can analyze these results and then come up with some really interesting questions to have as a team going forward. So looking at the evidence base, and it's a really interesting growing body of evidence at the moment about what team leadership and personal leadership qualities that are needed to promote psychological safety. And these are just 8 of the favourites that we've picked out in terms of the things that the evidence is telling us we need to do as a leader. So you'll see that they cover some of Amy Emerson's work, but there's a lot of other kind of evidence sources as well. So one of the things I've done is share a 2-page reading list and resources list for any of you that are interested in this growing evidence body. And we've created that through the Q community, through the Psychology for Improvement group. So if you'd like to join us, you'd be very welcome if you're interested in this kind of area of research, because I think over the next 10 years, we'll see an even greater clarity about what leadership skills are required in order to become psychologically safe leaders. So just to summarise, really, if you can do one thing from today, get used to using those 3 skills that we've talked about, encourage speaking up, enable clarity of thought, support productive conflict, mitigate failure, promote innovation and encourage novel ideas. Really try and reduce that learning anxiety and the fear of survival anxiety, that fear of being shamed or embarrassed in front of your teammates. And don't lose sight of the accountability. This is not just about being empathic, it's also about trying to motivate people and hold people to account in terms of your shared purpose. Hand back to you, John.
Thanks, Anna. That was fabulous, and great to do the exercise as cringing as it was for us to do it, but you know, I think it's great to you know, realize and practice kind of some of these skills, because they are skills, aren't they? I mean, you know, you can learn this even if you've, you know, not done or failed, you've been safe before. These are things that you can learn.
Absolutely. And Amy Emerson talks a lot about the fact that in healthcare, we're often not only in our own kind of team, we're doing what she calls teaming, where we're crossing boundaries and we're having to talk to people in different teams. And you might get really comfortable at doing these skills with a group of people that you meet day in, day out. But unless you practice them, it can be really hard to do it across boundaries, which is why when you look at patient safety incidents, the amount of issues that come out around human communication and interaction are so stark and so high, aren't they? So yeah, just because you're empathic or you're a humble leader doesn't mean you don't have to practice these things to get better and better at it.
Yeah. And obviously today we're focusing on psychologically safe leadership, but there's also, we can all be practicing psychological safety to promote psychological safety, you know, psychologically safe leadership.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, the one point I would make as well is we will all get this wrong. We will all be imperfect psychologically safe leaders. And in a way, the really crucial bit is then how you go back. If you know you haven't framed it well, how do you go back and say, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I framed that. I'm not sure I opened up that conversation in quite the way that I wanted to do. Or I was having a really busy, stressful day yesterday. I might not have put things in the way that I really wanted to put them. So I always think that you don't just get the moment that you're doing some of these skills. You can carry on afterwards and you can show you're psychologically safe because you noticed the fact that you didn't get it perfectly right, that you noticed that you had a different impact than the one that you intended.
Yeah.
Maureen.
And it's also then up to all of us to also give people a break and recognize, like you said, you won't get it right all the time, and to
John,
accept someone's reframing. I see. Yeah, Maureen.
Could I share a little story that I only
please.
reminded myself of, you know, in the session today? But numbers of years ago, working as assistant director of nursing, a colleague phoned me one day and asked, could we have a cup of coffee together? Could I talk to you? And I kind of was quite taken aback. And she booked a formal room for us to meet in, and I come to the formal room. But she had wanted to share with me how I was making her feel. And that at team meetings, that I was interfering, or not interfering, but cutting across and cutting her short. I had absolutely no knowledge of it. And I was first mortified, embarrassed, but really thankful that she was able to come and say it to me. You know, and I think of her every day. I'm obviously not going to say her name now, but in everything I do, I've taken her with me, you know, and that's maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah. And that feedback is so powerful, isn't it, for us as leaders, because we've picked up habits all the way through our life. We have certain implicit biases, and we don't see ourselves in the round. So there's something as well, isn't there, about how do you not only be a good psychologically safe leader, but it's how are you a psychologically safe follower as well? And how could you give your leaders some feedback about the impact that they're having that they might not even realize? So what a lovely example that was, Maureen.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, we would all like to know these things, you know, and it's very courageous, obviously, to tell someone these things, but it's really what we'd all like to know. Juanita, have we any questions coming in there for Anna and for our discussion?
We do indeed. It's just the first one here from Valerie Toomey. Just, is it a good idea to regularly simulate scenarios with your team? So obviously that was quite powerful, you know, to see that. Is it a good idea?
I think it is. I think sometimes in healthcare we don't think about group processes enough. do we? We turn up on the day and we just expect to get on and work. We don't talk or think about how is it that we're working with each other. Could we make that any better? Would it make our lives at work more joyful, or improve the way that we communicate with each other? So even that very simple kind of exercise of getting John and Maureen to frame, it's very quick, it's very immediate. You could do that about if you were a leader and you really wanted to think as a team about how you're going to do a new piece of work. You could get several members of the team thinking, well, how would you frame this work? How would we pitch it to another team? How would we get people excited in this improvement work? How could we do that? So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and somebody else had sort of built on that, Nicola Jones, wondering were there other exercises that come to mind that could be performed with the team to sort of help with that?
Yeah, I mean, a really great one is just a very simple one is just to kind of think about how you communicate with each other. Some organizations are able to also access really great kind of psychological testing or psychological metrics so that you understand kind of as a team what your kind of psychological kind of profile is, and then having a discussion about that can be really useful. But I think there are lots of good team building exercises that you can do. And as I said, I mentioned Liberating Structures, which is, if you Google it, it's a really helpful website and downloadable app about simple exercises you can do within your team to get people to contribute and to participate. So they've got a way that you can select different exercises according to the output that you want to generate. So that's really great.
Yeah, we're big fans of liberating structures here.
We are, yeah. There's one that comes to mind if you were role-playing improv prototyping. And we've done it both ways. So role-playing the good and the bad and the ugly can actually really help if you've got sort of that sort of team that might be a little bit vulnerable and getting into that space. It's worked really, really well.
Yeah.
Someone's just asking to clarify the name of the app. So it's just called Liberating Structures.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, if you're in a situation where the team is not in a good place, and maybe you've come in as a new leader or you've been there for a while and morale is not in a good place, what's a good starting point to sort of develop that trust again?
I think if you know that you're coming in and that you're going to have to work hard to get psychological safety up, then you also have to be aware as a leader that all eyes are on you. You're being watched all the time about how you do things, how you set the frame, how you even do simple things like set an agenda for a team meeting, or how you listen to people. So the first thing I'd say is really get aware of your own behaviours, and are you trying to role model psychological safety at all times? So that's the first thing, because that people will be watching you to see whether you're going to be the same as the last leader. Are you going to do things differently? And a lot will come from that. But I think if you know that you've got some problems, then one of the things that we're doing in Northumbria is we're actually dedicating some team time for teams to get together to think about how are they functioning as a team. I wouldn't be afraid of kind of calling that out and saying, look, I wonder if we could get better at being a team, and is that a project that we could have some time in thinking about together? And it's surprising that just mixing things up sometimes in terms of the way that you might run a team meeting, for instance, can be a really effective way of making change.
Okay.
So the Sheffield Flow Academy, on their website, they've got a really helpful downloadable resource about how to run effective meetings that shares the roles out, so it's not the same old people do the same old things. And actually, even just introducing something like that, it's got nothing to do in its own right with psychological safety, but the fact that you're introducing a new way of doing things is a very big signal that you want to include people.
That's really helpful. There's one other sort of question here, and then I think maybe from a time perspective, we might pass over then to John again. Just it's from Joanna Downey. Just we need to look at diversity and the different generations in our teams, another dimension, and any advice that you might have on that.
Yeah, I think really making sure if you are the most senior person in the room, or if you're a hippo, the most highly paid person in the room, like, then really make sure that you role model even more strongly that you want to hear from the most junior people in the team. So that's the junior senior split. And if you're thinking about inclusivity around diversity, then I think you want to be really clear that you're really interested not in ideas that just come from one kind of sector of your team. You want to be very actively at promoting equality and making sure that you're giving people equal airtime. And again, a simple thing you can do as a leader is show an interest in bringing in ideas from outside of your organization and from other countries as well. So role modeling again that you're interested in difference and that difference is a good thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
I'll
you.
pass back over to John, but thank you again, Anna.
Oh, Anna, that's great. We've covered some great ground there. I see a comment there from Simone Carton. Leadership is about showing and sharing vulnerability and uncertainty, and also being able to pivot as required. Any thoughts on that? And I suppose my immediate question is like, we've for a long time been taught that leadership is the opposite of that. You know, it's showing no vulnerability. It's showing absolute certainty. So do we need to be weaned off old leadership and learn about new leadership?
I think there's a fine balance, isn't there? Because you don't want your leader to be vulnerable all the time. But I think what you do want to do is show you're human, and you particularly want to show that you're fallible, that you make mistakes, and you're okay to admit that you make mistakes. I think you need to be yourself. If there's one word of advice, be a leader as your own authentic self. Warts and all. You're not perfect. None of us are.
It's not about overdoing it either then. And like you said, I mean, I think what's very important, it's not just about being nice, you know, I mean.
It's not. You've got to be able to say some tough stuff sometimes as a leader, but you can say tough stuff compassionately, and you could be curious about it. You know, I wonder if you know, why it is that today it seemed a bit tough for you.
Yeah.
You're curious.
Yeah. I go back to Maureen's story, you know, I mean, in one sense, you would say that's not a very nice thing to do, you know, to tell someone exactly how it is, but ultimately it is the nicest and most caring thing you could do for them. So it's another fine line we have to walk.
It's difficult, and we will, you know, we will overstep that line sometimes. We'll get it wrong. The other thing to say is psychological safety will be different for you and me and Maureen. You know, so if you've got a team of, you know, 20 people, you might not get it right for all 20 people in that moment, and that's important to recognize too. We can't always understand what we trigger in other people. Yeah.
Well, that's been fabulous. Maureen, any thoughts?
Just an amazing thank you to Anna for bringing all those lovely thoughts back to me. And also, Anna, for joining us in your HSE Green today.
I know, I was rocking a little bit of green. I thought I'd enjoy that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, Anna and Juanita.
Thanks very much.
It's been a real pleasure, and thank you. You know, that's been a wonderful conclusion, and I have a feeling this is not the last time we're going to talk about psychological safety, but I think you've really given us some good ideas there and some real skills that we can take away to practice over the summer. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
So folks, we're getting ready, no more than yourselves, to take a break over the summer, and we will be back though in September, and so our first QPS talk time in September will be on the 12th of September. That's on the Tuesday, and we will be marking World Patient Safety Day, which will be happening a few days later on the 17th of September. So please put it in your diary now, or you can scan the QR code to remind yourself to join us on the 12th of September. And just really, we want to flag up early again. I know it's only June now, but we do want people to start thinking and getting ready for World Patient Safety Day. It is on a Sunday. It's the 17th of September, so it's whatever day it falls on. But I'm sure your organizations will be marking it in and around that time. And like I said, we're marking it on the 12th. But there is a bumper edition of Quality and Patient Safety Matters that we're preparing for. So if you've got some ideas, please do get in touch with us anything you'd like to share that might be included in that. The HSE theme is to elevate the patient voice and safety through health literacy. So we really want the patient voice to be appreciated for all that it brings to patient safety. Again, just a reminder, please do connect with us, do follow us on Twitter and through our YouTube channel. You can watch back on the previous webinars, including today's, which will be up shortly. And that's something we'd encourage you to do and to share with others. And then finally, just please, over the summer, we don't want you to think about us all the time, but maybe just occasionally when you're on your holidays, if you could just take a picture of somewhere nice that you're visiting in Ireland or anywhere you go around the world, just take a picture and just tell us where you are and tag us using QPS TalkTime, and we'll try and put a compilation of our QPS TalkTime on Tour photos together when we come back to you in September. So thank you very much for joining us all through the season. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Anna. Big thank you, of course, to Maureen and Juanita, who have been part of today, but they're so much part of every QPS TalkTime we do. And in the background, all the people you don't see, Shima and all the people who help us. So really big thanks to them. It's not possible without all the hard work they do, and we get to kind of make it look easy out the front because they've done all the hard work in the back. So thanks everybody, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Bye bye.